So today, folks, I am at the Altoona Railroad Museum. I'll be headed in there soon. There's a bunch of stuff that I don't remember. Like the Harry and Rebecca Bennett Learning Center and different things. So it should be interesting. We'll see you in a bit. Right as you enter to go pay and everything, they have a flatbed and some tracks. And then there's actually a picnic area. So we'll be back. So before you enter the building, they have a little thing about the Juniata shops. By 1889, the Pennsylvania Railroad had outgrown the capacity of the shop complex here at 12th Street. Soon the facilities here would be complemented by new buildings in the nearby borough of Juniata, not yet a part of the city of Altoona. That shop would also have its own master mechanic. The first foreman appointed at the new Juniata erecting shop complex was William Henry Harry Bennett. Born in Canada in 1853, Mr. Bennett rose through the ranks of the Pennsylvania Railroad, serving in apprenticeships in Gouverneur, New York, and Carlisle, PA, before coming to Altoona as a machinist in the local shops. On January 20th, 1901, Harry Bennett was promoted to master mechanic, a position he occupied until December 1st, 1921, when he joined the staff of the Chief of Motive Power. He occupied this post until his retirement on June 1st, 1922. His tenure as master mechanic in Juniata saw some of the most rapid growth on the Pennsylvania system. We start out, this is right in the beginning of the thing, and you have the conductor here telling you which way to go to pay to get in. Train 1361, and we'll be back. We've been on the elevator, the Pennsylvania Railroad Museum. So they have PRR 1361. You start on the third floor. This is a locomotive control stand of a typical PRR class K4 steam locomotive. Like the cockpit in today's modern aircraft, this was a complicated system that had to be built, maintained, and run expertly.
Okay, back to our train.
And they got a picture of all the people who worked, and a little model.
Here we go.
Oh, this is so cool. Hello, Thomas. Hi.
Okay, we're coupled. 12 cars to Pittsburgh. Turning steam back to the train for heat.
Ticket booth. A ticket to ride. Railroad passes were a prized benefit that gave workers and their families a window to the world, establishing them as the best traveled of America's industrial middle class. Lizards ride the rails. Who rode the rails in the days before good roads and widespread automobile ownership? Nearly everyone did. The real question was how you rode. From privileged industrialists who traveled aboard plush railroad private rail cars, the daily commuter to the vacationer, to the traveling salesman, to the hobo who froze clinging to truss rods beneath a boxcar, almost everyone went by train. In the early 20th century, railroads carried whole trainloads of immigrants to settle the West. Presidential candidates hired trains to go whistle-stopping across the nation. The term lounge lizards was coined for those who traveled in luxury, enjoying fine dining, mellow strains of music playing from the radio in the lounge car, and ballet services at 70 miles per hour. At the other extreme, hobos, homeless and jobless, huddled around trackside fires till they were ready to hop the next freight on and move on. There's a menu. Look at those prices. I wish I could get some that way now.
November 27th, 1910, was a day New York have been anticipating for nearly a decade.
Somebody took them to ancient Rome and ancient Greece. I mean, they've never seen anything like that.
A map of the railroad system in PA.
Covering nearly 8
Some
acres,
more.
the building was the 4th largest in the world. The main waiting room, which extended the length of 2 seats.
In an era when standard meant the criterion by which everything else was judged, the Pennsylvania Railroad called itself the Standard Railroad of the World. A more modest slogan, Standard Railroad of America, was used around 1900, but the more imperial term had taken over by the 1920s. The phrase also conveyed that PRR, with its scientific and engineering approach to railroading, established many structural and performance standards with industry. Some more models, and one of the things they used to get the things. The chain of command formed the basis for the chain of communication needed to direct railroad traffic along the line. Each division, consisting of 100 to 500 miles of track, employed chief dispatchers who communicated management's orders to its tower operators. They, in turn, controlled the switching and timing of tracks and trains. Building blocks of communication. After a disastrous wreck in 1863, a system of managing traffic within smaller sections of track was devised. At the entry to each section or block was a banner signal. When a train entered a block, the banner was set to indicate that a train was inside the block. When the train exited the block, a telegraph signal was sent back to report that the block was clear, and the banner was reset. What is this place? On November 18, 1883, some 600 North American railroad companies adopted Standard Time, a system of 4 scientifically based time zones, leaving behind a patchwork of 53 separate railroad time standards. If you were a farmer, knowing the exact time wasn't so critical. You worked by the sun, but pity the poor train traveler arriving in Pittsburgh and hoping to connect to another railroad's departure. 6 different times were in effect there, varying by as much as 37 minutes, depending on which railroad clock you consulted. More of the model train up here. Some pictures. What history. Pictures of the history. At the 1933 Chicago World's Fair, PRR dioramas and murals credited railroads with transforming America in an era when industrial products was highly honored. Railroads were behind the nation's industrialization, carrying coal to stoke furnaces and steel and iron to be shaped into buildings and bridges. They put oranges on tables in Pennsylvania and turned agriculture into big business. This is a thing of the president of the PRR.
And let's start with Altoona.
This is cool.
Altoona people build and repair thousands of our locomotives, our freight cars, and passenger cars. They make all sorts of parts. One of the busiest and most important divisions
I like the
of our
clock.
26,000-mile Pennsy system.
This is cool. The Iron Horse grows wings. And then over here we have the most successful railroad electrification project in the Western Hemisphere. Replaced many PRR steam engines. For Altoona, the news was still good. Electric locomotives would be built here. PRR got into electrification in a big way with the opening of tunnels under the Hudson River in 1910. Soon the Pennsy began electrifying its first suburban commuter services. By the 1930s, with roots in populous areas like New York, Philadelphia, Washington, PRR's 2,739 track miles represented the largest trunk, 40% of electrified lines in America. Show you some of the cool stuff. How a steam engine works. Like a giant tea kettle, the tremendous power needed to move a train weighing thousands of tons comes from the energy released when water is heated to make steam. The expanding steam pushes the piston in the cylinder, moving the drive rods and turning the wheels. That's just super cool. And we'll move on here. I want to show you a couple other things. I want to show you a lot of other things, but the old brick sphere, because the PRR was the third largest consumer of lamps in the country, it tested all kinds of bulbs to figure out which were the most efficient and economical, reliable, and long-lasting. This giant photometer, created and constructed in Altoona in 1926, was made to measure the intensity of light over time. Such testing of incandescent lamps was conducted in specialized electric labs within the physical laboratory division of the test department. And then over here we got a bunch of stuff. I'm not sure what these. Clean sweep. Clearing track switches in snow and ice was crucial to keeping the PRR on schedule during the winter months, and the humble broom used by track workers was the primary tool. After reports by maintenance crews that their brooms didn't last, L.W. Smith of the Altoona Test Department designed a steel-bound broom that was 25 times more durable. That's real cool. And here we got, even the PRR regulation required that power be turned off because linemen worked on overhead electric lines. Additional safety was provided by the use of insulating rubber gloves. Gloves were tested every 90 days to ensure that even a tiny pinhole would not cost a lineman his life. That's how they tested them. It's just so cool. Thousands of questions ranging from what kind of snow broom sweeps the longest to what kind of locomotive pulls the hardest kept the Altoona labs busy. With the founding of the Test Department and Chemical Laboratory in Altoona in 1874 and 1875, PRR established the first formal test facilities in American railroading. Early research was directed at improving the rails. Eventually, nearly everything seemed to come under a watchful eye or a microscope. Infectious germs. In that part of the chemical laboratory used for bacteriology, glass beakers were used for routine analysis of pathological specimens such as urine, water, or blood. Tests ranged from determining whether disinfectants met sanitation regulations to degrees of wholesomeness of drinking water for the dining cars. This is jam-packed with all kinds of history and stuff. World War II steam's last hurrah. Diesel locomotives had come on the scene in the late 1920s and the 1930s, switching in backwater yards and hauling a few streamlined flyers. But when the U.S. entered World War II, the government imposed restrictions. Railroads could build few new engines and no passenger cars, so the job of moving unprecedented volumes of wartime freight and passengers fell largely to America's fleet of some 40,000 steam locomotives. The Pennsy would put its 4,330 steam engines to work and keep them running, moving the men and material to support the war. Now I'm on the second floor, and it says, "Welcome to the Altoona Works. The shops, our job here in the motive power department was to design, build, and maintain locomotives to move the Pensy's 5,000 daily trains. At one time we were turning out thousands of freight cars every year, too, and even some of our own passenger cars. We were world famous for the skill of our workers and the quality of our work." And we're going into the motive department. You can see the fellows working there. And some more of the murals and model trains. I have a feeling this is going to be a long video, people. Hope you're sticking with me. And if you would, hit that thumbs up. That is one big wheel changing a tire. Does it surprise you that steam locomotives have tires? They do, but they're made of steel, not rubber. Yes, they can get flat spots if an engineer has to use an emergency braking and the engine slides any distance. More often, they simply wear down. The tire is really a changeable rim that can be replaced as part of a routine maintenance. And we'll keep going here. If you're a railroader, your life is never your own. The irregularity of freight train traffic means you usually get an hour or two notice to report for work as a member of freight crew. Until you gain a lot of seniority, you're subject to an up and down flow of work as it comes to you through the call board. Track work was hard and important, but track workers were among the lowest paid positions on the railroad. They were usually filled by the latest groups to immigrate and by African Americans, since PRR hiring practices discriminated on the basis of race as well as national origin. Track work was among the limited job opportunities the PRR opened to these groups, until fairness in hiring began to be supported by laws and the unions after World War II. So, there's somebody looking down. I guess she's signaling. I have another lady here, and this is looking down from, I showed you these. This is from the second floor, the view that I showed you the first floor when we first entered the building. And we got a lady here greeting us. Hopefully this isn't too dark. A city of railroads. Altoona was the largest railroad community in America. 17,000 railroad employees and 60,000 people strong by the 1920s. Unlike the case at other company-dominated towns, the PRR did not own Altoona. However, it shaped the place, the job market, and the daily lives of its people. Absolutely. The tracks and shops, not a main street or a town square, define the street grid laid out by PRR engineers. while the PRR invested sparingly and generally in self-interest, a hospital, a high school, apprentice program, a fire department, it also sponsored dozens of recreational activities from the bands to sports teams. It's a Western Flyer. Little wagon. That is so cool. Gotta love antiques. At home. The rhythms of a railroader's family life were determined by the call board. Those of shop workers were dictated by how busy the shops were. In busy times, it might mean a night shift, in slow times, a furlough. Most railroad families owned homes in which the women worked hard, adjusting to uncertainty and changing schedules while trying to stay ahead of the soot. For relaxation, there was an endless menu of clubs, sports, church and activities, and social events, but the good life could be sporadic. This is a look at the little hobby horse. At least I think that's what they were called. I actually had one of those. I think they actually might still make them. Here's a kitchen of a typical home. The stove, the pipe stove, and the living room. Not sure what that instrument is. Old sewing machines. Check out the old uniforms and the. I'm not sure what that kind of instrument is, to be honest. I thought I knew all the brass instruments. And I don't see anything that tells me either. These are all different uniforms, some of the sports that they played. Here's Curve Beer, Altoona 36 Lager, double header bar whiskey, 15 cents. Some old matchboxes. As with churches, most ethnic groups hung out at their own clubs. Not all watering holes offered the same kind of experience. If you wanted to hash about work, you would head for the bar nearest work, maybe the shop gate or the whistle stop bar. If you wanted to dress up and have a more elegant time, you could go to the Pan Alto, where you might run into your boss. Salute, here's to you. Ethnic clubs often provided a family gathering place, social club and bar all in one. The Bavarian Club served natives that German region, Italians relaxed at the Christopher Columbus Club, and a separate Black Elks Club chapter was organized by the African American community. And Pan Alto did not close its doors until I was a youngster, but I was born when it closed. Check out the old cigarette machine. I don't know if some of you probably remember them like I do.
Welcome to Kelly's.
Now we're in the Irish bar.
And travel back in time to an Altoona many years ago.
Here's the Germania Building and Loan Association. They're all working out deals. Railroads set up home loan associations to finance the mortgages of fellow workers and residents. So even though the railroad didn't really own the town, it pretty much owned the town. Here's 11th Avenue, which you will see, and it is not anywhere near as vibrant as it was at one point. But I lived in the first ward on 10th Avenue near 13th Street. Altoona was segregated like heck when we came here. We could not go to the YMCA. We could not swim in the swimming pools. We could not go into a lot of restaurants here. That's a quote from James Colbert, his dining car waiter. And that's a shame. That is a sorry part of Altoona history. Altoona was a swinging town during the Jazz and Big Bend eras. Many Altoonans blew off steam by stepping out to the latest nightlife. During Prohibition, social life moved to fraternal halls and clubs where dances and parties were sometimes enlivened by bathtub gin. In the prosperous 1920s, Altoona attracted big-time entertainers which brought crowds to the Eagles Club or Brotherhood Hall. There was something going on almost every evening. Dick Hyler remembers everything was located in downtown. The movie house, the theater, your social club. Then came the Jaffa Mosque. They had wrestling matches and all sorts of things. And I don't know those who can remember, George Burns actually played in Altoona. Not played, but did his routine, his vaudeville routine in Altoona, and a long time he would make jokes about Altoona. I believe I had talked about this on my Painesville Railroad Museum thing, how Horseshoe Curve was on the bomb list. 8 Nazi spies who had landed from German submarines off the coast of Florida and Long Island were arrested by the FBI in June of 1942. They carried explosive $169,000 in U.S. currency and plans to sabotage key industrial, utility, and transportation sites, including the Horseshoe Curve. 2 of the spies were jailed and 6 executed. And there's pictures of them, but that just proves what I have been saying. And then, as I mentioned earlier, George Byrne plays in Altoona. When a performer got an 18-week stint on the Orpheum circuit, he was bound to end up in Altoona. Being on the way between big cities with streetcars running through the night and the shops running 3 shifts per day, Altoona was an exciting place to be. Whether at the Mishler for highbrow or the Orpheum for vaudeville, everyone played here. Sarah Bernhardt and the Barrymores, Al Jolson and Houdini, Jack Dempsey and Isadore Duncan, Joshua Heifetz and Rachmaninoff, and George Burns. George Burns remembers replacing someone who got sick. He was just 18 years old, without Gracie, and the audience loved him. Nathan Birnbaum, also alias Willie Sachs, alias George Burns, stayed the whole week and was on his way to stardom. Hear this baby going. This, I showed you a little bit of it on the beginning of the video. Now I'm showing you some more. Now it did rain, so I got to be careful here. We got Altoona Pipe and Steel. Well, I guess it's still raining. And we got the Pennsylvania thing. Now they're still probably working on restoring some stuff. And I'm not totally sure. I guess this is just to picnic in. We got stuff over there. So overall, this is a great, jam-packed, full of railroad history and the history of Altoona. And I highly recommend you all come down and see it here. I want to thank you all for coming along, and remember, if you need a wheelchair, walker, cane, whatever it might be that you need to live your life to its fullest, it's not making you handicapped, it's making you handy capable. Thank you all for joining me. Have a great day. God bless.